Demolition finally headed to the WWE Hall of Fame. They will be inducted in the class of 2026 during WrestleMania 42 weekend in Las Vegas. And, well, we all are saying the same thing. It's about time that Demolition Axe and Smash are joining the WWE Hall of Fame. Bill Eadie, Barry Darsow, it's been a long wait for those guys. And, yes, there were some reasons why it took a bit to probably get to this point. At one point, Bill Eadie was involved in a lawsuit against WWE. There is a history there between him and Vince McMahon and all this other stuff, but it was time to let these guys get into the Hall of Fame. If there's going to be a Hall of Fame, you got to have Demolition in it when it comes to tag teams, because they were, just kind of the feel of an era when you think about the impact that these guys had during that run. And you go back to, the late 80s in the WWF, and you just think about, obviously, there are the Road Warriors and Hawk and Animal, and there's been, of course, plenty of disputes over the years about, some similarities between the two. But at the same time, you just think about the full package with Demolition. And, I think just from my favorite memories of thinking back to them, like, what's the first thing that stands out with Demolition? Well, obviously, it's the face paint, right? Look at these guys. These are two badasses. You're looking at them. You got the spikes. You got all kinds of just stuff that intimidates the hell out of you, right? And I can remember back in the day, I'm just like, hey, I'm not going to mess with these guys. Who would want to mess with these guys? But the other thing that even right now, as I'm doing this video, we've all been there, where we're like humming the theme song, right, of Demolition. Here comes the axe. Here comes the smasher. Like, it's an easy song. And we always say, like, in professional wrestling, especially during that era, if you go back to the golden era of, the age where you've got the theme songs and how they're really making their mark, how that's kind of setting a new form of entertainment for the WWF at the time. And you just think about that theme song. And again, if I'm sitting there, obviously we're in the land of kayfabe here, and I'm the opponent of Axe and Smash. I'm watching these guys come out. I'm hearing this theme song, and I'm like, no thanks. No thanks. Like, these are just two absolute badasses when it comes to Demolition. And so it's great to finally see them in the Hall of Fame because, Bill Eadie is I think he's 78 years old now. And so you always want to see these guys get rewarded for their work while they are still here. There have been too many of those in professional wrestling where you wait too long and these guys don't get that shining moment. And even though they're in a class that's going to include Stephanie McMahon, AJ Styles, and others, these guys are going to get a great reaction. They should hopefully get plenty of time to give their speeches. Because remember, it's not just about, yes, the tag team itself, but these are two very accomplished guys in their careers. Obviously have had, different iterations. Bill Eadie was the masked superstar. He obviously has a notable, kind of long-time friendship with Andre the Giant. You talk about Barry Darsow. How many different characters did this guy play over the years? Of course, the Repo Man, a guilty pleasure, back in the early 90s as the New Generation era was about to get kickstarted. He was kind of on the end of that run there in 92, early, was he still there in 93? I think he was in the 93 Royal Rumble. But, so you just kind of think about that kind of stuff. And yes, there was like a different evolution of Demolition whenever they added Crush to the mix, the late Bryan Adams. But this is the one where you're just like, you think about these two guys. And I also, it was a different era too, where you're not judging these guys by their match ratings, right? We don't care about the star ratings with Demolition. It's more about the atmosphere, it's the feel, and just kind of embracing an era. But you think about the tag team division at the time, and, you've got the Rockers. They had, I think, really good match with the Rockers. There's one that's standing out in my head. I can't remember exactly when it was, but good matches with the Brainbusters. I thought they had good stuff with the Hart Foundation. And that was just kind of speaking to the tag team scene at the time, right? Where you're talking about these two guys and everything that they accomplished throughout their careers, but they were also there in a division where you've just had so many top-tier tag teams that really, we're talking Hall of Fame level tag teams, right? When you think about the group that was with them during this period. Obviously, one of the more memorable moments, I think, for Demolition one of the ones I remember the most. There are two in particular, outside of just the matches, as I said. One was the double turn that they had with the Powers of Pain, going back to Survivor Series. What a memorable kind of thing that was with Mr. Fuji, where he had the double turn in the middle of that just gigantic, what was it, a 20-man tag, I believe it was, for the Survivor Series elimination match. You had all these tag teams, if you really want to see how stacked things were. And we've done an audio podcast here on the channel looking back at that Survivor Series as well. I mean, the double turn with with Powers of Pain. We have Warlord and Barbarian had just come in. Like, that was good stuff. That was a very memorable thing. And again, like the appeal of thinking of those two teams having a rivalry and that kind of stuff, like that fed into, I think, that. The other thing that I think you just cannot overlook is the match against Andre and Haku, the Colossal Connection. And I just think that is another visual when you talk about WrestleMania VI. It's one where Hogan and Warrior is going to be the lasting visual just because of how things unfolded in that match between them. Warrior wins the title. It's a new era. But when you think about that, again, the match and the fallout, I know Andre's on, that's basically it for Andre. He was not in the shape to be having a classic match or anything at that point. But I think to just see Demolition with Andre and Haku and the crowd reaction, there's something else. If you haven't watched that one in a while, we're going to do a video review soon of WrestleMania VI. We're almost there. We kind of started off doing some audio podcasts and all this other stuff. But if you want to check those out, listen to them. You can get my thoughts on those. But we're going to kind of pick up with the video reviews here, do more video on the channel. We got to get to WrestleMania V first. But WrestleMania VI, that is one where we'll talk about Demolition at WrestleMania V too. But at WrestleMania VI, when you just, again, the crowd reaction, the pop, like all those things, it is just enormous. And that is why that era was the golden era. It's why it was so good, because you've just had an unbelievable reaction in Toronto during that match, and of course with how everything unfolded at the end of it. And that's another one I think that's easy, a top moment when you're thinking back on Demolition and their run in the WWF. And like I said, it would be something where I still thought, adding Crush to the mix, like it was a fun thing they could do. You could play around kind of with the mixing and matching, the old switcheroo, and then there were some times, though, it was not so believable. I think it was, what was it, the match I'm forgetting? Someone will remind me in the comments, where they did the switcheroo and the referee doesn't realize it's, not one guy or the other. And I'm just like, well, that's a little bit of a stretch. But still, it was the 80s. You can get away with that kind of stuff, or early 1990, whatever year that was, that they did that. But, I said it. It's just Demolition had to be in the Hall of Fame. They're a Hall of Fame tag team. I think these two guys, it goes beyond just their Demolition tag team too, right? The contributions these two made to the business could not get overlooked, especially when I look at some of the other people who are in this Hall of Fame. There's no way that these two guys can't be in there. And like I mentioned, it's probably not a surprise that it took this long just based on some outside factors there, but it's good to finally see them getting their opportunity. And I think it is one that when you think about the aesthetics, just the visual nature, and what that means in professional wrestling, you could not craft a much better view than this when it comes to seeing guys that, again, like when you just look at this, right? It's just, that is professional wrestling right there. Like, these are just two guys that have crafted a persona that you just can't match with just anybody. And I think that was the thing that really stood out the most, is that you couldn't just throw anyone into this role. It had to be two guys who could really play up the badassness, if we want to use that word, of this whole thing. And they just did it to perfection. And that's why they've always been one of my favorite tag teams. And yeah, I've actually been trying to hunt down the elusive action figures. I know there's like a 3 action figure set of Demolition with Crush in it. That one's does not seem to be too much of a bargain right now. And they're also the pairs you have with these two. But you guys let me know what you think about Demolition making the Hall of Fame. Do you have the action figures? I'd love to know that as well. I've seen a lot of people kind of sharing that also. And yeah, what were your favorite matches, favorite memories from Demolition? Like I said, I gave you mine. some of their matches against the Rockers, the Brainbusters, the Hart Foundation, the big match against the Colossal Connection, and that double turn with the Powers of Pain. Let me know your favorite memories from Demolition and your thoughts on Axe and Smash finally headed to the WWE Hall of Fame.